Good evening. My name is Eliyahu Hecht, and you're joining me on the Living a Breslov Life podcast, on which we plan to be speaking with all kinds of people, some just like yourself, who have found a home for their hearts in the teachings and guidance of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Breslov Life is a brand new initiative to share with a broad audience the wonders of the lessons of Rabbi Nachman and Breslov Hasidus, and how it can enhance the lives of so many. Make sure to check out the Breslov Life website at breslov.life to stay up to date with new information, happenings, and resources to help you live a Breslov life. Tonight's guest is Rabbi Yossi Katz, founder and creator of Breslov Life. Good evening, Yossi, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Elio. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Rabbi Katz, Reb Yossi, please tell our audience, what's your goal for creating Breslov Life?
My goal in creating Breslov Life was to be able not only to study Rabbi Nachman's original teachings, which we've all been inspired by, and I'm sure you have your stories as much as I have my story, and everyone else who's listening has their story, but to take it a step further and create a collaborative community where all of us can work together to apply the Rebbe's advice to solve all the problems that we face throughout life.
When you say community, what's your vision for that community? What would that community look like? Why would someone want to join and be part of that community?
Well, I would say in the beginning, many of the people who I've spoken to and who have expressed their optimism to join in this effort are really people who have already been touched by Rabbi Nachman and have been applying his advice to their life on different levels. But many of us, and most of us, feel that there's tremendous potential by taking these teachings and applying them in areas maybe where most of the research so far has been on translating books, on writing commentaries, on the scholastic part of the material, and now focusing in on what we call the lamaisa, on the on living and applying this advice. We feel that there's a much broader audience that would really benefit. And it's one thing to learn a Torah and Likutei Moharan, which you and I, Elio, we know how amazing, how incredible that is, how life-changing it is. That's one thing. But then to be able to take the advice of the Rebbe in a lesson, Likutei Moharan, and say, apply it to marital problems, to chinuch, to education issues, to all kinds of other relationship issues, to going to work and finding Hashem in the workplace. When we can do that, and I think the only way to really achieve to achieve progress in a short time is in a collaborative way. When we can do that together, those who understand this message and are interested in working together, then we can reach an entire new community, entire new just all kinds of people out there that would love to be able to glean that knowledge.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. Let's say we create a community, Breslov Life creates this community of Breslov like minded people. For many of our listeners, they have never learned anything Breslov. Um, how would you describe to those people why they should be interested in delving into a learning of the Rabbi Nachman of Breslov? How does the lessons of Rabbi Nachman, in your opinion, differ from all of the other wonderful ways there are to connect to Yiddishkeit, to Torah, to Hashem? What sets Breslov apart that would make someone think, I should check out this community and maybe consider becoming a part of it?
That's a wonderful question. If you want, I'd be happy to share my story with you at some point. But I think that every Breslover has been on a particular journey throughout their life, and um, they've faced various challenges in life. And Rabbi Nachman has a way of addressing us, a very unique way of addressing each individual, and it's the same Torah, obviously, as we've studied before. Rabbi Nachman didn't invent a new Torah. Everything's based on the same Torah, but the Rebbe has unique He has unique ways of looking at the Torah, interpreting the Torah, and explaining the Torah to us, where we can really find Hashem in every single situation. Every single lesson, Rabbi Nachman, it's like a new lens that we've been given. And we can look at whatever situation we're facing through that lens and find solutions which were there the entire time, but for some reason, without the tzaddik, without Rabbi Nachman's teachings, we were not aware of those solutions. They were really in front of our nose. And afterwards, we kind of say, like, wow, that's amazing. But somehow we might have missed that. So you might be davening in a shul and finding it difficult to connect with the davening, feeling like maybe it's boring or it's lifeless, so on and so forth. This is just an example. And you learn some of Rabbi Nachman's teachings, and all of a sudden, that same very shul, with that same very sitter, you're able to connect to Hashem at an entirely new level. You're able to connect at a much higher level. The words of the sitter come to life. The words of the Tehillim, and Rabbi Nachman actually spoke about this. He said to find yourself in Tehillim. That's one of his ideas, is that every single thing that David HaMelech experienced in life was really Ruach HaKodesh. And we can actually find ourselves in the same challenges that he had. We can actually interpret those to apply to our own life. So Rabbi Nachman has all these amazing ideas where you don't have to run off to some distant place, but actually the solutions to life, to all of your issues are there before you. And by studying the Rebbe's work, especially if you have friends who you can discuss how this is done, but by studying the Rebbe's works, you can find solutions that are right in front of your nose that you never noticed until now.
You bring up a good point, and I think that the Rebbe himself refers to this as the Hastara, where the solution, albeit right in front of a person's face, literally, is is the person themselves is unaware of that solution. And so, would you say that the Rebbe provides the framework and the guidance to make that solution come into focus and achieve those spiritual and Torah goals?
Absolutely. First of all, I would say there's something very unique about studying Rabbi Nachman's lessons. Somehow, and you can probably share this experience yourself. Somehow, no matter what you're learning, whichever lesson it is that Rabbi Nachman taught, everything that you experience afterwards seems to be tailor made for you to understand how to apply what you've just gained, apply it to real life. It's an amazing thing that I've seen so many times. It's like, how do I end up learning the exact lesson that I needed to deal with whatever was going on in front of me? So the Rabbi Nachman had this uncanny way of connecting the Torah to everything that's going on in the world at the present time, and it just always seems like uh, you read or you hear the exact teaching that's needed at the exact right time.
I can testify to that. There's been so many times where I felt that, is it could it possibly be that the Rebbe is aware of my situation, that he guided me to a particular Torah? And from having gone to Uman many times and interface with a lot of different people in Uman, I can say that I'm not the only one who shares that experience. It's uncanny how a person can be going through a particular experience in their life, and the Rebbe and the lesson that you choose at that moment seems to be particularly relevant. Um, but I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the Rebbe's ideas. Did the Rebbe invent ideas? What did the Rebbe do that was so revolutionary as far as invigorating Yiddishkeit? What was the Rebbe's mission?
The Rebbe said that he was old and new at the same time. And I believe the term is what he said was ani kankan yoshem alei chodosh. He said, like, he's this container of this old container that's full of new ideas. So he didn't he didn't invent anything as far as everything was based on all the tzaddikim, based on the Gemara, based on the Zohar, based on everything that came before him, the Arizal, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the Baal Shem Tov. Of course, the Rebbe is a great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, but he was able to combine all these teachings in a way that was never brought down it was never brought down to this level where became so practical. There's a story when the Rebbe was teaching the famous Torah Vav, the sixth lesson, Likutei Moharan. He asked his Hasidim who davened from the siddur that had all these kavanas, all these deep intentions that the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists would use when they davened. And his point later on was to show how all the practical advice that he would share about this lesson, which deals with kavod, with the person's ego, and how to subjugate the ego to Hashem. He showed how really all these deep intentions, these kavanas that people davened that people davened with, that you were able to achieve the same rectification through just following his advice and subjugating your ego to Hashem. So what that means is that everything that he's teaching, really, they're Torah lessons which are rooted in the deepest mystical levels that only the Mekubalim, those who study Kabbalah, would really understand. But he was able to bring them down to us in a way where when we work on something like our ego, we're actually on the spiritual playing field, in the spiritual world, we're actually accomplishing and rectifying the same type of things that these great mystics would be working on. So it's the highest Torah, and it's being brought down in the most practical, everyday way, and that's why it's so powerful. We're not dealing with someone who just opened up a chumash and he says a nice pshat. We're dealing with one of the greatest Talmidei Chachamim, who's bringing down this Torah as low as it can possibly go, so that it can apply to every aspect of our lives.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a few times the idea that the Rebbe is particularly effective in helping a person or an individual overcome their challenges, deal or cope with their challenges. I was wondering, Rebbe Yossi, do you feel that the Rebbe is addressing himself to people's physical challenges, life's challenges, religious challenges? And if the answer is all of the above, how could any one person create lessons that can address that kind of a spectrum?
Well, Rabbi Nachman is dealing primarily with the neshama. He's dealing with the neshama. Now, that being said, the neshama is the source of everything. Everything is really a funnel, and on the highest rung of that funnel, it's completely ruchnis, it's completely spiritual. But as that funnel comes down into this world, it filters down into this world. So there are many other areas that it filters down through, which would include emotional health, physical things, and everything else, and in between. So while as the Rebbe is talking about the spiritual, it definitely has an effect on everything else, because everything ultimately comes back to the spiritual origins. This world is really a filtered system that goes all the way down into the physical world.
Interesting. For the uninitiated, for those who are unfamiliar in a personal way with Breslover Hasidus, a lot of people think they know what Breslov Hasidus is all about. We've all seen different kinds of people who claim or who feel that they are practicing Breslov Hasidus. Sometimes we see these folks in the street. Sometimes we see them in a pizza shop. Sometimes we see them in a shul. Sometimes we see them giving a shiur on the internet. A lot of different venues that we see people trying to practice and share Breslov Hasidus. In your opinion, what kind of a person is drawn to Breslov Hasidus, and what is Breslov Hasidus?
Everyone has their story to tell, so I don't want to make the mistake of generalizing. But what I would say is that those who became Breslov Hasidim, like Reb Nosson, who was Rabbi Nachman's main Talmud, his main student. Reb Nosson was, for example, his father-in-law was the greatest posek. He was the greatest rabbi in that whole region. He was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He came from a wealthy family. He seemed to have everything going for him, and yet he still was missing something. Even though he was tremendously learned, he still felt that Yiddishkeit, there was something that was lacking. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with Yiddishkeit. There was something in his connection to Yiddishkeit that wasn't 100% fulfilling. And I think that's the precedent for every single person that's attracted to Breslov Hasidus. All of us, uh, whether we were from birth, whether the person is a Balchuva, whether the person wasn't religious at all. They all turned to Yiddishkeit. They all wanted to grow, to forge a connection and a relationship to Hashem. And the tools they were given, they might have been somewhat helpful, but there was just something still lacking. There was something they were still seeking. And somehow, we don't know how, we don't understand how it works, but somehow the tzaddik Rabbi Nachman, somehow he got in front of us. He stood in the way even for a moment, and there's some message that he sent to us. And when we heard that message, when we felt that message, we knew that we've come home. This is what we were looking for. This is what we were missing the whole time. And everyone has a different message, a different line, a different something else that was said to them. But I think that there was some message, and it just felt so right. It felt like exactly that peace we've been searching for so long. So the Rebbe has a way of peering into our neshama, understanding that our neshama wants nothing more than create uh, uh, to create a meaningful relationship with Hashem, to live a life where we feel contentment, we feel like we're growing, we feel like we have a sense of purpose. That's what every neshama wants. No Jewish person can be satisfied until they've reached that point. And Rabbi Nachman knows how to wake that neshama up and find that meaning that neshama's been looking for the entire time. And when we're fed that, we know that we're in the right place.
Right. It's like that missing piece to the puzzle. When it fits right into the space that's left, it's a perfect fit, and it just helps you to be complete and at peace with your environment, and to understand the idea of growth and getting closer to Hashem, and integrating everything that we're all about, and as far as Torah and mitzvos. So recently I said that sometimes people feel, well, why do I need a Rebbe in my life? Why do I need an intermediary between me and Hashem? Uh, for a lot of our listeners, probably the idea of having this kind of a Rebbe is a foreign concept. Um, and I don't know if you would agree, but one of the ideas that I had was that the Rebbe doesn't serve as an intermediary between an individual and Hashem. Rather, he serves as the connector between the individual and Hashem. Would you say that that's true of Rabbi Nachman?
Absolutely. The Rebbe said that he wanted us to be tzaddikim just like him. It's interesting. There's this idea I heard once that the uh, the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, who are great tzaddikim, they worked in a way um, where there was bittul b'chira. They were able to take away the freedom of choice of those that surrounded them, all of their chassidim, and that means that they were so able to inspire and connect the Hasidim around them to Hashem, that those people, they weren't the same people as they were before. They were people that were just in a state of awe, and they served Hashem that way. The Rebbe is unique in that he said he wanted us to be a tzaddik like him. What that means is he felt, keep your bechira, keep your freedom of choice. I don't want to take anything away from you. I want you to stay where you are with those challenges. And I'm going to teach you how I became great. And that goes back to Chaim Aran, where the Rebbe tells his life story, and he's very honest. And he talks about all of his challenges. And that's really the way Rabbi Nachman deals with us. He never takes any shortcuts. He always cuts straight to the chase, and he tells us how he became great, and he provides all of the encouragement for us to follow along in his footsteps. And it's all about forging that relationship with Hashem. The Rebbe's just there. He's holding your hand. He's encouraging you. He's telling you that I've been through this path already, so you have nothing to worry about because I know what you're going to face. I'll be there with you, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to hear at that time. You only have to be open to hearing that and then trying to implement my advice. But if you're courageous enough to do this and you trust me, then you'll make it and become great just like I was able to become great.
So is one of the goals of Breslov Life to make more accessible, especially to people who have never learned Breslov or Hasidus before, Likutei Moharan, Likutei Halachos, and all the others from, so that they can connect to the Rebbe, and through that connection, then connect in a more meaningful way to Hashem Himself.
That's absolutely what this is all about. Breslov Baruch Hashem, it's not a cult of any type. Um, One of the unique features of Breslov Hasidim, they were called the Toita Hasidim, the dead Hasidim, because they didn't have a live Rebbe. And for many, many years, there was no other Hasidic group, to the best of my knowledge, that continued in that way without a Rebbe. The only way that could work, not having a live person to idolize, the only way that could work would be if the Hasidim of Rabbi Nachman carried on through the Rebbe's advice, through his teachings, and not through his personality. And so yes, there's no personality cult over here. There's no one alive. The reverence we have for the Rebbe is a reflection of how much he's helped each of us create that relationship with Hashem. It's like when you go to a doctor the first time and he prescribes some medicine, maybe you're a little bit cautious. But if you've had a condition that you've been to other doctors to treat before, and the medicine has not worked, and now you go to this new doctor, and right away, he gives you something and it starts to help, and you go back to him again and again, and every time he just gets it right and he prescribes the exact correct prescription. First of all, you'll be very trusting of that Rebbe, of that doctor, and secondly, you'll have tremendous reverence for him. So Rabbi Nachman is the spiritual doctor. He really understands the neshama. He understands the connection between the neshama and the psyche, which is very unique. There's many things that Freud said that have been accepted today, and you can find those ideas in Rabbi Nachman who preceded him. The Rebbe had an uncanny understanding of the human mind and the human condition, and he was able to connect that to the spiritual causes and provide this like spiritual, psychological form of interpretation of the Torah that is tremendously powerful and relevant. And for example, when we talk about the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, so for most people, we think of these two voices, that one is telling us to do the right thing and one is telling us to do the wrong thing, and we have to overpower the Yetzer Hara and choose to do right. And of course, on an elementary level, that's correct. But the way Rabbi Nachman often describes it is really about having negative thoughts versus positive thoughts. Am I going to think in a negative way? Am I going to become despondent, depressed, sad, guilty, nervous, anxious, which especially give up, which all these things give up? That would be the Yetzer Hara. It's not just telling me to do some kind of avera, to do something bad. And on the other hand, the Yetzer Tov is the positivity. Can I find Hashem in my life? Can I see the goodness in myself and in other people? Can I have hope? Can I believe that there's a way to fix? And this is really the battle. Which thoughts do you focus on? Which thoughts become your reality? So Rabbi Nachman had just a different way of observing Yiddishkeit and guiding us through the Torah and all the mitzvahs, so that they become, they're the same Torah and the same mitzvahs, but we see them in an entirely different light, a very positive, a very joyous type of light, and one which we find we can naturally connect to.
And I can only imagine when you say the same Torah and the same mitzvahs, but now we're connecting in such a fundamentally unique and fresh way, that for those who have learned Likutei Moran, they're shaking their heads right now and saying, I know exactly what you're talking about. And for those who have not yet learned Likutei Moran, they're wondering, what is he talking about? Is that possible? I've been doing the same mitzvah my entire life. How can I possibly look at this in a fresh, exciting way that kind of answers my questions about life and connects me to the Rabbanu Shalom in a new, fresh way that feels just as relevant and exciting as the first day I started doing it. So I hope that the organization that you've created will succeed in its mission as far as teaching these lessons, getting them out there, making them accessible, breaking down some of those barriers that some people might discover or encounter if they tried to do this all on their own. Because Likutei Moharan is not a simple sefer to just pick up and start learning. It does take a little bit of practice to get used to, in a sense, but with the right chevra, with the right environment, it can flow very easily, and with some of that collaboration you were talking about before. So
Absolutely.
I'm so happy to be talking to you, Reb Yossi. I have just a couple more questions if you have another minute or two.
Sure.
The first question that I have, or the second to last question actually, is a lot of people who have some familiarity with Breslov or Hasidus know that one of the cornerstones of Breslov is his Bodidus. And for a lot of people, they ask the question, I daven 3 times a day. Isn't that what Hashem wants? Isn't that enough? And they might also think, I've davened today. I'm not really in the mood to daven some more. What is his bodidus? Maybe you could take away some of that mystery. Is it a bunch of grown men running out into the forest and hugging a tree? What is his bodidus? Kind of maybe you could break that down for us a little bit.
Hisbodedus is an amazing topic. It's worthwhile spending an entire interview uh, just discussing that.
What
But
is what is the translation of his
it
bodidus?
Hisbodedus means to be alone, to be by yourself, to be boded, to be by yourself. That's what it really means. The way that it's applied by the Breslov Hasidim means to be one with Hashem, to be alone with Hashem. Um, there's an understanding that ultimately, when we say I, me, we're really talking about our neshama. And the neshama that we have, that we've been given, is part of Hashem as well. So to really get to understand and to know yourself, you've got to connect with the part of you which is your neshama and which is part of Hashem. So every single day, Rabbi Nachman advised that a person go into a place of nature, like a forest, somewhere where it's quiet, where people are not around. This was, the idealistic way to do this, and find some quiet moments to reflect on your true nature, the part of you that's godly. And he said, just speak like you would speak to a good friend. When you have things going on in life, when you have difficulties, I know myself, I can't wait to find my wife, to find a good friend, to find someone to kind of unburden myself with. It's just it's something as humans we feel that we need to do this. And Hashem said, "Come to me, come talk to me. I'm sitting here, I'm waiting for you." And that goes back to the fact that every challenge we've been given, everything that's going on in our life, is really Hashem calling out to us, right? Just we've been reading these parshas about the Imois, about the matriarchs, how they all had difficulty having children, and it was because Hashem desired their prayers. And everything that we go through in life is really Hashem calling out to us and saying, I want you to connect to me through this challenge, through this obstacle, through this difficulty. So Rabbi Nachman said, go out, be by yourself, be just with Hashem, connect to that part of you that's directly connected to Hashem, and discover who you are, discover what your life is all about. Unburden yourself, just talk. The only way you can do this, you can't do this if the words are scripted. It's too difficult. As beautiful as the words of tefillah are, and our rabbis, when they composed the tefillah, Shachris, Mincha, Maariv, they knew to include every single thing we should ask for, but we wouldn't be smart enough to know that we have to ask first. So that's why you have all the various brachas in the Shemona Esrei, where they've got to cover all the grounds. We need, if we recognize that everything we're blessed with is only because of our davening, it's only the davening is really the pipeline that brings down all the shefa, all the bracha into this world. So the rabbi said, you got to cover all the, you got to cover everything. So they gave us the Shemona Esrei and they gave us the beautiful tefillas. But at the same time, Rabbi Nachman understood that on a personal level, we also needed our own prayers. We needed to find Hashem in every aspect of our life. We need to reinforce what our true identities are and discover what our true identity is. And that can only be done through our own words that come from our neshama, that come from our experience. And then when we have that and we feel that connection to Hashem, it's so much easier to go back to the Siddur, to go back to the Shemona Esrei, and to feel an entirely different intensity when we take that same Siddur and we say those same words. They're not the same words anymore. They're not the same tefillas anymore. Those words have become transformed, and we really see ourselves. We really feel like we're talking to Hashem, like we're standing before Him, if we've made the hisbodedus and then come to daven to Hashem.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yossi, one more question, and then I think our time for this segment is up. If Breslov is the answer, what's the question?
If Breslov is the answer, what's the question? My view is that Breslov's the answer if it's the answer to your question, meaning to say I don't impose my beliefs or my experiences on anyone else. I challenge everyone who has questions, who looks at Yiddishkeit and says there's something that bothers me, who thinks back to their life and says I feel like I've been missing something. I feel like Hashem was not present. It feels that way. Seems that Hashem wasn't present at a certain time in my life. And I challenge them based on my experience and experience of so many other Breslov Chassidim that I've spoken to. I challenge them to come to Breslov Life or to a Breslover friend or to someone who is a little bit more knowledgeable than them and knows where to look to and say, let's ask Rabbi Nachman. Let's look at his farm. Let's talk to the Breslov Chassidim. Ask your question. Don't be afraid to ask your question. Rabbi Nachman welcomes questions, no matter what type of question it is. Rabbi Nachman wants to hear your question. He has an answer for you. He has a way of helping you understand why you had that experience. He will show you how to balance your life in a way where you'll live a happy and healthy, fulfilling life. And all you have to do is be honest and be open and come to Breslov Life, come to our teachers and our writers, come to any Breslover chassid that you know and say, help me out. I've got something on my chest. I want to get it off my chest. I've got a problem I've always had. I want to understand what Rabbi Nachman says about that. And I challenge you to go and do that yourself. Don't take my advice for it, but do take up the opportunity, and you will see, as countless others have seen, that your life will be completely transformed.
Wow. Well, we certainly wish you tremendous hatzlacha in your new endeavor. And I know that all the lives that you touch through your efforts and sharing the holy kadosh words of the Rebbe and Reb Nosson will enlighten the hearts and minds of everyone who learns them and enhance their lives and their Yiddishkeit and their relationship with their fellow human being, and most importantly, their relationship with the Rabbanu Shalom. So I wish you tremendous, tremendous luck, success, hatzlacha, mazel, and we hope to be speaking to you again.
Amen. Thank you so much, Eliyahu. Thank you so much.
Sure. Good luck.
Thank you.